I want a group of people who are not ideologically captured by either side. I am tired of the extremes and the extremists who dominate the debate. They have the megaphone. I consider myself an old school liberal. You have to make that distinction now because, you know, the word woke, which started out as a good thing, being alert to injustice, and a lot of people get triggered by the word. There's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense.
Bill Maher recently joined Joe Scarborough on MSNBC for a candid conversation, and it didn't take long before things got blunt. True to form, Maher, one of the few outspoken voices left on the liberal side, looked Scarborough straight in the eye and called out MSNBC and its progressive crowd for losing focus. His remarks definitely struck a nerve, stirring up some serious reactions across the board. Welcome to the channel where we cut through the noise with clear, bold commentary. If you're into honest takes and sharp insights, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned.
No misinformation? There's some disinformation from the left, but comparing it to what Donald Trump spews out every day, every week, comparing it to what Elon Musk is spewing out, unfortunately, on X, there's no...
You were like, Bill, how can you, Mr. False Equivalency? It's like, no, Joe, come on. I thought you were Joe Scarborough. There's crazy on both sides.
The conversation kicked off with a nod to a past disagreement, where Bill Maher had called out Joe Scarborough for insisting that the left doesn't spread misinformation. Yes, really. Scarborough suggested that progressives were the ultimate truth-tellers, and Maher wasn't buying it. With a calm but pointed tone, Maher pushed back, highlighting that even networks like MSNBC have shared misleading narratives. He used the COVID pandemic as a key example, how the messaging constantly shifted, how opposing views were shut down, and how political motives often overshadowed actual science. Maher didn't stop at criticizing the coverage. He also took aim at the broader culture of censorship and self-righteousness that fueled it. The moment landed hard, and Scarborough's reaction said it all. He looked like he'd just tasted something sour.
I changed. You know, people do. Or have things changed, and it's mostly things. The left wasn't as crazy under Bush and Obama. They just weren't. And I was not going to hold my tongue.
Maher then tackled a common claim from progressives that he's the one who's changed. But he didn't hold back. In his response, "I haven't changed," he said. "The left has lost its mind." And to be fair, he made a strong point. There was a time when being liberal meant standing up for free speech, questioning authority, and thinking independently, all values Maher has supported for years. But in his view, today's version of the left has become something else entirely, more rigid, more performative, and a lot less tolerant of differing opinions.
College kids marching for Hamas? Don't tell me there hasn't been a change.
Right.
And the victim culture, the cancel culture.
I will say this, though. As far, listen, I agree. There's been a change on the left.
What once was a movement focused on progress, Maher argued, has now turned into a race to see who can be the most outraged. He criticized the modern left for being caught up in purity tests, identity politics, and shutting down any form of disagreement, even from within. In the past, healthy debate was part of democracy. Today, it can get you canceled. Instead of encouraging open discussion, Maher said the new left often demands total agreement, punishes anyone with a nuanced view, and targets people, even lifelong liberals like him, just for thinking differently.
I consider myself an old school liberal. You have to make that distinction now because, you know, the word woke, which started out as a good thing, being alert to injustice, and a lot of people get triggered by the...
I remember when being woke meant standing up for fairness, equality, and justice. It was a rallying cry we could all get behind, a call to make real change. But today, that word has taken on a very different meaning. Maher pointed out how it's been twisted by some on the far left into a tool for control and virtue signaling, rather than real progress. He's not against justice. He's against using language and morality as weapons to silence open discussion. Because when woke turns into a parody of itself, the real issues that matter most end up buried beneath the noise.
Now has to answer for, or for people have just used the word to ascribe a number of extreme things on the left.
Maher's message was simple. Liberalism didn't used to turn on itself. But somewhere along the way, the left abandoned its core values, and that's when things started to unravel. He pointed to networks like MSNBC, saying they've helped push extreme ideas instead of encouraging honest debate. Rather than question groupthink, they often boost the loudest, most radical voices and treat them as the norm. Instead of informing the public, they shape the news to fit a narrative. Dissenting views, even from their own side, are dismissed or mocked. The goal doesn't seem to be truth anymore, but full agreement. And by doing this, Maher says, they've driven away millions of Americans who just want fair, balanced journalism, not lectures wrapped in news. That, he argues, is why Democrats are losing ground.
Kamala's big, I think, challenge here to win over the undecided voters is to convince them that she's not part of what they suspect she might be, sort of a stealth version of the worst excesses of the left.
Well, interestingly, Kamala Harris never really separated herself from the far left's more extreme positions. In fact, she often stood at the center of them. Instead of being a voice of balance or moderation, she leaned into the controversy, supporting policies like letting biological men compete in women's sports and use women's facilities. These moves stirred backlash across party lines. Her steady backing of these ideas didn't just frustrate conservatives. It left moderates confused and even made some liberals uneasy. Rather than focusing on real leadership and bringing people together, Harris leaned into identity politics and symbolic gestures. And when the country faced serious challenges, like rising crime, inflation, or border concerns, her answers were often unclear, surface level, or missing altogether. At a time when people were craving common sense and direction, she chose ideology over action. That's not leadership, it's performance. And the effects were felt nationwide.
A coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him, they certainly are those, and then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense.
Bill Maher made a strong point. Not everyone liked Donald Trump's personality, but when it came to leadership and policy, many saw him as the more stable choice between the two candidates. His positions focused on traditional American priorities, a strong economy, national security, tighter border control, and energy independence. Like him or not, Trump was clear about where he stood. That kind of directness and conviction struck a chord with millions of Americans. And that's a big reason why he didn't just win. He won by a large margin.
I just want her to say, look, I get this about the blue team, and it's on my...
While Kamala Harris often spoke in vague terms and avoided specifics, Trump focused on results. From major tax cuts to cutting red tape and even securing peace agreements in the Middle East, his record was filled with action. He didn't try to please everyone. He simply got things done. He tackled tough issues directly and consistently stayed focused on what he believed was best for America. Even critics admitted that, agree with him or not, he was steady and clear in his approach. Meanwhile, Biden struggled, frequently hesitating and often choosing activists over experienced problem solvers. Maher, like many others, saw that once all the noise faded, Trump had a more solid foundation, and voters remembered that when it counted. But in the media, many were still busy defending Kamala Harris. Just watch how Joe Scarborough tries to make the case for her.
Easy to say. Yeah, I said that in 2019. I was in a competitive thing. Now, she did say, I think she said this was the law under Trump, too. He didn't change it. But it's very easy to say, I don't believe that anymore. And on that issue, she should. I wanted to ask.
You can see how Scarborough subtly tried to bring Trump into the discussion, attempting to pin Kamala Harris's failures on him. This is exactly the kind of media spin Bill Maher has been calling out. Legacy media seems incapable of breaking free from this pattern. Whenever a Democrat loses ground, it's Trump's fault. If a policy falls short, somehow Trump is to blame. When Harris's approval ratings drop, of course, it's all because of the former president. This lazy blame game is one of the big reasons trust in the media has hit rock bottom. Instead of holding Democrats accountable for their mistakes, outlets like MSNBC twist the story to make Trump the scapegoat, even when he's not in office anymore. It's both intellectually dishonest and condescending to the public. Maher sees the problem. Here, when the media refuses to criticize their own side, it creates an echo chamber where real progress is impossible. Blaming Trump only lets the left avoid facing the real issue. Kamala Harris's problems are hers alone, and no amount of finger-pointing will change that.
I want a group of people who are not ideologically captured by either side. I am tired of the extremes and the extremists who dominate the debate. They have the megaphone.
Right. We're all worn out by the political extremes, especially the far-left tactics that the media continues to promote. Credit to Maher for having the courage to call out MSNBC's blatant bias. That took real guts in today's cancel-happy climate. Sure, MSNBC has the platform, the audience, and the resources. But what's the point if they're just using it to push one-sided narratives and protect their political allies, rather than offering balanced reporting? At this point, they've become cheerleaders for the Democratic Party. Maher didn't just challenge the status quo, he exposed it. And that's exactly what we need more of. Voices willing to question the media from the inside. If we can't trust the press to tell the truth, no matter who it offends, our democracy suffers. It's time for the media to stop acting like political PR teams and start doing actual journalism. School, given how far left MSNBC has become, it's hard to imagine them ever finding that middle ground where news is reported without heavy bias. They've gotten so wrapped up in their own agenda that objectivity seems like a distant memory. Instead of searching for truth and balance, they push stories through a partisan filter, twisting facts, cherry-picking details, and shaping narratives to serve their political interests. At this point, expecting neutrality from MSNBC is like hoping for fairness in a political ad. It's just not going to happen. And that's the problem. When a major news outlet values political alignment over journalistic integrity, it destroys public trust. Americans aren't looking for cheerleaders or ideologues. They want facts, clarity, and truth. But as long as MSNBC is buried in its ideological bubble, real journalism is just a pipe dream.